Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the program. I'm Christiane Amanpour. If you are on the outs with the West, look east. That's what Russian President Vladimir Putin is doing anyway, shaking hands on a massive, reputed $400 billion deal with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Shanghai. He'll be supplying China with natural gas for 30 years. The contract is a lifeline for Putin after his annexation of Crimea and global backlash, including sanctions. The Russian economy is ailing. The ruble, the market, and economic growth are all down. Meantime, the clock is ticking for Ukraine. Russia is threatening to cut off its gas supply on June 1st. Having nearly doubled the price, Moscow is now demanding that Kiev pay up in advance. But it's not just Russia getting the cold shoulder from the West. China could find itself in a cold cyber war with the United States now that Washington has publicly indicted 5 members of the Chinese military on charges of stealing trade secrets on an industrial scale. What does this all mean for the global world order? Well, who better to answer than Richard Clarke, who has 30 years national security experience and serving 3 U.S. presidents. He was counterterrorism czar in the days after 9/11, and he served on the espionage review panel that President Obama set up after Edward Snowden's NSA revelations. Now he's out of government. He's written his 3rd torn from the headlines novel, Sting of the Drone, and he joins me from Washington. Richard Clarke, welcome back to the program.
Good to be with you again.
There is a major disagreement between the West and President Putin over Ukraine. Today, we have seen Putin sign what seems to be a lifeline, a long insurance policy against further U.S. sanctions. He signed a multi-hundred-billion-dollar gas deal that he's been salivating over, trying to negotiate for the last decade. Now they've done it. Isn't he basically saying, here, West, you can just stuff it, I can do what I want, and I've got other partners and other customers?
He's sitting on a huge pile of gas and oil. By stealing the Crimea, he has stolen the offshore areas which have even more oil and gas that have not been tapped yet. And so for the foreseeable future, Russia is going to be the number 2 or 3 exporter of oil and gas in the world, and there will always be a market for them somewhere. The fact that it's going to be China in part as a result of this deal today is just one of the many customers they're going to have, including Western Europe. Western Europe's going to continue to buy from them because there's not enough supply in the world for them to cut off Russia.
So how do you see this issue of Ukraine being resolved? And do you not worry that China and Russia are now sort of being forced into an increasing marriage of convenience and commercialism that could, again, be something that opposes in a significant way Western national security interests?
I think it's a little early to worry about Sino-Soviet, if you will, in the old Cold War phrase, rapprochement. They're competitors. And China is also very much in a codependent relationship with the United States. Our economies are really intertwined. So I think this is natural for Russia and China to have trade. The Russian and Chinese trade, even with this gas deal, will be a small fraction, very small fraction, of the U.S.-China trade.
Let us talk about this cyber war that seems to be breaking out between the United States and China. China is talking about retaliating, and I want to know why you believe it was in the U.S. interest to make this very public indictment at this time. What was the point of that?
Well, Christiane, the United States has been trying for many years to get the Chinese to stop stealing corporate secrets and giving them to Chinese companies. And thousands of American jobs have been lost because of this cyber espionage that they do when they break into an American company like U.S. Steel or Alcoa, and they give the information from that company to the Chinese company that is its competition. We've raised it at the presidential level. We've raised it at the cabinet level. We have talks going on, but they're going nowhere. The Chinese deny they're doing it when they've been caught red-handed.
Do you worry that this could cause a retaliatory cycle? And could it paradoxically injure the United States? Could there be a rupture in military-to-military, cooperation, for instance, between the U.S. and China?
Well, Christiane, I actually hope it does result in escalation and tit for tat, because we need this issue resolved. And we can't go on the way it's been. And this first step by the United States will undoubtedly result in an escalation of this issue. And we need to do that. We need to have this issue resolved one way or the other. If the Chinese are going to keep hacking into our companies, then we're going to have to do something about it.
All right, that's from your point of view. From the Chinese point of view, they make charges of hypocrisy. How can the U.S. stand on the moral high ground, especially after the Snowden revelations? The ambassador said to me yesterday the U.S. has no credibility on this issue, and I'd just like to play you a short clip of what he told me.
I don't know how they can make a distinction between such activities. How do they explain the attacks on Chinese companies, universities, and even individuals? Is that for national defense, or is that for other purposes?
He says that you're doing it against all their targets.
Well, there's a distinction. He may not like it, but there is a distinction. And that distinction is recognized by nations around the world. It's recognized by the WTO, the World Trade Organization. And that is, governments are not supposed to break into companies in other countries, steal information, and give it to their own companies. Sure, the United States also hacks. It hacks for national security purposes.
Obviously, Edward Snowden's revelations show that the United States has hacked into, I think it's called Huawei, it's hacked into other, like, trade negotiations. Even in Europe, people are saying, hang on a second, is that really a distinction that can be made?
It's a distinction that has been made for years, and the WTO, for example, says you're not supposed to do it. The United States government, by law, cannot spy on behalf of private companies. We can't break into Airbus and give its secrets to Boeing. It's illegal. We don't do it. Other governments don't do it. China does it systematically, in a wholesale way, brazenly, and it's resulted in the loss of thousands of American jobs.